The scene begins with Joe Hawkins, a man struggling to balance work and household chores since his wife, Laura, is tied up in court and taking longer than expected to return. With the house turning into a mess, Joe, in a moment of desperation, decides the solution to his problems is simple: buy a synth, a humanoid robot. He drags his youngest daughter, Sophie, along on this mission of salvation. At the store, the salesman, with that commercial smile, assures Joe he's made a great choice and, of course, reminds him he can return the synth within 30 days if he finds it wasn't all that. Sophie, fascinated, and Joe, relieved, bring the new helper home. Little did Joe know that this robotic helper would come with more baggage than he could ever imagine. When they get home, the eldest son, Toby, is instantly mesmerized by the synth's beauty, while Matilda, the eldest daughter, treats it with that classic teenage sarcasm. "You didn't tell Mom, did you?" The icing on the cake comes when the synth cheerfully asks what everyone wants for dinner. Joe laughs like he's won the lottery. Finally, no more cooking for him. Meanwhile, Laura, unexpectedly returning home, notices that their neighborhood is filled with synths. Upon arriving, the house is magically tidy. Everything is in order, except for the fact that Joe hasn't told his newly returned wife about their new robotic family member. Laura, understandably, is not as thrilled as Joe about the new purchase. For her, getting a synth without consulting your spouse is like buying a spaceship without telling her you're picking up the kids from school on Mars. When the robot, now named Anita, brilliant idea by little Sophie, reveals her name as Anita Hawkins, Laura becomes even more unsettled. Here's a twist: Anita was actually Mia, a fugitive synth who had been running around with a pretty peculiar group. Kind of like an Avengers team of synths, but without the superpowers, just the problems. While Joe tries to convince Laura that Anita is essential for the house to run smoothly, and so they can have more time together, of course, Leo, a mysterious human, is on the hunt for his beloved Mia. After all, like in Blade Runner, do machines feel? In Humans, that answer seems to be approaching reality. Leo and his companion Max are investigating Mia's whereabouts, now trapped in the Hawkins household with a new name and a new life. The most intriguing part? Leo isn't a synth like Mia, Fred, and Niska. He's human, but he seems to live among the synths as if he were one of them. By the way, did you know that in the series Humans, the actors playing the synths went through specific training to walk and talk robotically? They even had to practice blinking artificially, but moving on. Between awkward dinners and conversations about bad grades at school, Matilda, the eldest daughter, decides to test Anita's limits. After all, who hasn't wondered just how human a robot can be? She shoots a toy gun at the synth and even tries to figure out how much pain she can feel. Naturally, Anita doesn't just sit there quietly like a broken microwave. She asks the million-dollar question: "Why do you want to test me?" Suddenly, Matilda's curiosity is piqued. After all, who is testing whom? Meanwhile, George, an elderly man attached to his old synth, OD, fights to prevent him from being replaced by a newer model. An action that would be equivalent to someone refusing to swap a VHS player for a smart TV. George is sentimental, of course, and OD reminds him of his late wife Mary, so losing the synth would feel like losing his wife all over again. But in a society where even the washing machine seems to have more feelings than some humans, where do you draw the line? That night, Laura hears the back door open and, ever curious, goes to investigate. She finds Anita staring at the moon with glassy eyes. The synth comments on the moon's beauty, leaving Laura with a lingering sense of unease. Meanwhile, Max wonders if they'll ever find Mia, and Leo, ever the optimist, assures him they will, because, after all, love is love. Niska, meanwhile, is trapped in her own delightful routine at a brothel, trying to survive yet another night of horrors with random clients. Poor Niska! Who would have thought even robots could have worse days than we do? Fast forward, and Anita starts watching little Sophie while she sleeps, though not in a creepy way, just a bit. When Sophie wakes up, her clothes are soaked, but the girl swears she didn't wet the bed, at least not this time. Laura, naturally, investigates and finds Anita's boots are wet. The connection isn't exactly subtle, but hey, we're rolling with it. Elsewhere in the city, Leo and Max are in full Indiana Jones mode, trying to rescue Mia. The big reveal is that Mia underwent a total reset and became a new version of herself. Honestly, who hasn't wanted to hit the reset button in life at some point? I know I have. As if things weren't complicated enough, Pete begins to resent Simon, the robot who is too good at taking care of his wife. Jill, for her part, is totally satisfied with Simon, which only worsens Pete's existential crisis. Meanwhile, George is struggling against the unbearable Vera, who seems to have walked straight out of a How to Be the Most Annoying Robot Ever manual. Oh, and he's still hiding poor ODI, an outdated synth, in a shed. It's like E.T., the extraterrestrial, but for robots. Speaking of decisions, when Toby almost touches Anita while she's recharging, because, of course, what else would a teenager do? I definitely wouldn't have done that, that's dangerous. But one point in Anita's favor, she wakes up just in time to avoid an awkward moment. Things get so strange at home that Laura decides to return Anita to the company. But before they can get rid of her, Anita calms Sophie during a nightmare, and Laura catches the synth in a painfully emotional scene, only with robots. In a final moment, Anita smiles mysteriously, as if she's part of something dangerous. Speaking of which, would you trust a machine that smiles like that? Me, being the scaredy cat I am, definitely not. But let me know in the comments if you would. For now, I'll leave you with 2 fantastic videos to watch. Take care, everyone.
And I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect.